Let us discuss things as we used to, in a civilized manner.
Fair words, Carlyle. But a little out of place, given the battalion you've assembled against us.
When you look back at the mid-2000s to the early 2010s, it's hard not to think about Twilight as one of the biggest cultural phenomenons of that era. Stephenie Meyer's books didn't just sell well, they completely exploded, dominating bestseller lists and sparking a massive wave of young adult vampire romance stories. And once the books made the jump to the big screen starting in 2008, the Twilight Saga basically owned the YA movie landscape alongside the Hunger Games. Between the books, the hype, and the fandom, Twilight wasn't just a story, it was an entire movement in pop culture. The movie series wrapped up in 2012 with Breaking Dawn Part 2, and ever since then, things have been a little quiet on the Twilight front. Meyer has written a few more books, but those haven't exactly continued the original storyline. Instead, they're more like reimaginings or alternate takes. For example, in 2015, she released Life and Death, Twilight Reimagined, which gender-swapped the main characters so that Bella became Beau Swan and Edward became Edith Cullen. Then, in 2020, Meyer gave fans Midnight Sun, which retells the events of the very first book, but this time through Edward's perspective. These books have kept the fandom interested, but they didn't answer the big question fans have been asking for years. Could there ever be a real continuation of this story? Even though the movies ended more than a decade ago, Twilight has never really gone away. It's always hovered around the edges of pop culture. Some people roll their eyes when it comes up, but the truth is that the love for Bella, Edward, Jacob, and the whole Cullen family has never disappeared. There's still a huge appetite for something new, whether it's another book, a new movie, or even a TV series. That's the thing about Meyer's story. She tapped into a timeless mix of romance, danger, and fantasy that continues to resonate even 20 years after the first book was released. And fans might actually be getting part of what they've been hoping for. In September 2024, Netflix confirmed that an animated series based on Midnight Sun is in the works. This is a pretty big deal because it's the first real adaptation since Breaking Dawn Part 2 back in 2012. Details are still under wraps. No one knows the cast, the number of episodes, or even when it's coming out. But one big thing is clear. Stephenie Meyer herself will be serving as one of the executive producers. That alone makes fans hopeful that the show will stay true to the spirit of the original saga. What makes this animated show so intriguing is that it isn't just rehashing the same story we already saw in the movies. Instead of adapting Twilight again from Bella's perspective, the series will retell everything from Edward's point of view, just like Midnight Sun. Because of this, it could actually fix some of the issues that fans had with the original films, especially in Breaking Dawn. For instance, Midnight Sun sheds light on a big question that the first book left unanswered. Where exactly did Edward go when he left Forks after meeting Bella in biology class? In Twilight, all we know is that Edward disappears for a while because he's overwhelmed by Bella's scent and afraid of what he might do. But Midnight Sun goes into detail, explaining that Edward travels to Alaska and stays with the Denali clan, a group of vampires who are so close to the Cullens that they're practically family. Tanya, one of the Denali vampires, even harbors feelings for Edward and initially thinks he might be visiting to return her affections. Of course, she quickly realizes that's not the case, and eventually Tanya convinces him to return to Forks and face his struggles. This detail matters because in the Twilight movies, the Denali clan doesn't even appear until Breaking Dawn. By then, their introduction feels rushed and kind of out of place, especially since those movies were already packed with too many new characters. If the animated show includes the Denalis early on, it'll make their later involvement with the Cullens feel much more natural. That's just one example of how this new series could deepen the story and fix some of the awkward moments from the films. Now, when it comes to the original saga, one of the characters who probably deserved a lot more attention was Renesmee, Bella and Edward's daughter. Her birth in Breaking Dawn was controversial to say the least. A bunch of fans felt that the story rushed through her existence, and the whole imprinting situation with Jacob was strange for some viewers. Still, Renesmee was set up as one of the most important figures in the future of the Cullen family. Because of the imprinting bond, Jacob is permanently tied to her, which not only guarantees her safety from the wolf pack, but also establishes her as a bridge between the werewolves and the vampires. That's why so many fans believe there's actually room for a sixth Twilight movie. Even though the main saga wrapped up neatly, Renesmee's story feels like the natural place to continue. She's not just any child, she's a half-human, half-vampire hybrid, something incredibly rare in the Twilight world. As she grows, she'd have to navigate unique challenges that neither her vampire family nor the humans around her could fully understand. Imagine the dramatic tension of her trying to fit into both worlds while also discovering who she really is. And of course, there's her eventual romance with Jacob. While the movies ended with Jacob imprinting on Renesmee as a baby, something that sparked endless debates, it was always meant to develop into a real relationship once she matured and made her own choices. A continuation could show how that bond grows naturally and how Renesmee balances her independence with the weight of such a powerful, predestined connection. It would also give the story a chance to show her becoming a young adult with her own voice, instead of just being seen as Bella and Edward's child. There's also the potential for new conflicts. With the Volturi still out there, it's hard to believe they would simply let Renesmee live peacefully forever. After all, her existence challenges everything they stand for, and the confrontation in Breaking Dawn Part 2 felt like a temporary resolution rather than a permanent one. A new story could explore what happens when the Volturi decide to return, this time with a more calculated plan. Renesmee could very well be the key to the Cullen family's survival, or maybe even the one who unites vampire covens around the world in a way her parents never could. And if the story wanted to shake things up even more, it could move the Cullens to a new location. Forks will always be iconic, but Renesmee's future doesn't have to be tied to the same rainy little town. Taking her story to another place, maybe even another country, would open up a whole bunch of opportunities for fresh characters, new vampire covens, and exciting dangers. It could also help modernize the story for today's audience, especially since the original movies felt very much like products of the 2000s. Another reason a continuation makes sense is the current trend of revisiting beloved franchises. We've seen Harry Potter spin-offs, Hunger Games prequels, and even reboots of shows like Gossip Girl. Nostalgia is powerful, and studios know fans are eager to reconnect with stories they grew up with. Considering how huge Twilight once was and how its fandom has stayed loyal, it wouldn't be surprising at all if a studio decided to greenlight a sixth movie or even a new book focusing on Renesmee. At the end of the day, Twilight is one of those franchises that people either love or love to hate, but the important part is that people are still talking about it, and when something stays relevant for that long, it's only a matter of time before it makes some kind of comeback. Between the upcoming Netflix animated series and the possibility of a continuation through Renesmee's story, the Cullen family's world might be far from finished. So even though the saga wrapped up more than 10 years ago, it's not hard to imagine another chapter being written. Renesmee's journey could finally take center stage, giving fans the mix of romance, danger, and supernatural drama that made them fall in love with Twilight in the first place. Because for a bunch of us, the story never really ended. It just paused, waiting for the right moment to start again. And that's that for today's video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.